Good evening, and welcome or welcome back to the meditation course. This is part 2 that we're up to this evening. I'm Tanya, and we are L'Emergence, the Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga Meditation Center here in Montreal. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've been practicing if you were joining us last week. And if this is your first time joining us for the meditation course, we'll be doing a bit of a revision, and then we'll be continuing on. So, as mentioned, this is a Raj Yoga Meditation Center. And in fact, the meditation that we're looking at in this series, this 4-part series, is actually an entry point into the practice called simply Raj Yoga. And Raj means ruler or king, and yoga, union or connection, relationship. And so this is a practice to bring us back into a state of unification or wholeness, integration, that allows us to experience a state of mastery. And ultimately, the point of all of this, the purpose of this, is to give us a greater or increased quality of life, to feel that I can live my life in a way that brings me more fulfillment, satisfaction, contentment, happiness, and peace. To be at peace with oneself, to enjoy what I'm doing in my life. And so a state of mastery is essential for that, because if there isn't that mastery over our actions, over our behavior, even over our thinking, then what we put out is not going to give us the kind of returns that are going to result in that peace and happiness and contentment. So, it sounds like a big order, but in fact, the method is very, very simple. And we are going to review that now. So, what we had looked at last week was at the foundation of this practice is the idea and the understanding that it is a spiritual consciousness that will give us that highest quality of behavior and action. And it is that spiritual consciousness that has completely been absent from how we've been living our lives. So what does that mean, a spiritual consciousness? So perhaps you remember from last week, or if you're just joining for this evening, spiritual consciousness, well, in fact, spiritual just means not physical. But both are kinds of energy. So there's physical energy, the energy of matter, that has certain laws and aspects governing it. And then there's spiritual energy, which is not physical. It can't be seen through physical means, but it exists. And it interacts with matter in the form of this body and results in life, in actions. And so a human being is made up of two things: a spiritual being and a human body. So human being, human body, spiritual being, you put the two together and you have a human being. But the issue is we have not been living with that kind of awareness. In fact, we've been living as a body because, of course, the body is visible and it's very insistent. We have these sense organs for which we're receiving all kinds of stimulus all the time, basically reinforcing this experience of the self, that I'm what I hear, what I see, what I taste, what I touch. All of these things are working together to give me an experience that I call me, or how I'm experiencing myself in relationship with the world, with the external environment. But in fact, we are so much more than this body. In fact, we're completely separate from this body. And it is in cultivating this spiritual awareness of the self that I completely change the quality of my behavior and actions, and through that, the quality of my life. And so, one of the things I like to do and I did talk about this last week, is I'm also a Pilates instructor. So I've been teaching and practicing this meditation or this practice of Raj Yoga for over 20 years. I've been teaching Pilates and practicing it for about the same amount of time. And what I find is that the two can work quite well together, not so much the Pilates, but movement and looking at the dynamics of the body can really help us to see and understand more clearly how it works for the being. Because the body is very visible, the being is invisible. And it's kind of hard to understand what's going on in something we can't even see, and that we've been so disconnected from that we almost don't even experience or feel it much anymore. So what we had looked at last week to start to get a sense of how the being and the body are working together and how I can use what I experience in the body to help to understand and to recognize the functioning of the being, we're going to look at something called alignment. So perhaps you remember we had talked about the alignment in the body can be compared to the awareness in the being. That when the alignment in the body is accurate, is, let's say, true, ideal, the body functions better. Better mobility, more strength, and more ease in that fundamental movement of breath. And we had used that aspect of breath as, if you will, the primary indicator that my alignment is as it should be, or at least approaching that ideal. And so we're going to do that right now so we can start to dive in and have an experience right away to get ourselves kind of moving towards then understanding and operating at the being level. So I'd like you to, as you're sitting in your chair, having your feet on the floor comfortably, legs are parallel. You can just rest your hands either on the arms of the chair or on your legs, your hands on your legs. And I want you to take a moment and you're going to use the power of that awareness, that consciousness that you have as that being. You're going to use that now to gently adjust your body so that you're going to rock the ribcage or roll the ribcage gently up the back of the chair until you feel your shoulder blades touching the chair back. So you, the being, in this particular moment, you have sent those directions that I've given you to your body, and you've moved your body until you, the being, are having the experience of your shoulder blades touching the back of the chair. So it is that consciousness that is you that experiences everything. Even though the feeling is in the body is not processing. It's not thinking, oh, that's so nice. It's I, the being, or it's not very nice, but it's I, the being, that is processing and having the experience. And I, this subtle being, this subtle point of consciousness, this spiritual entity, I am no part of this physical body. And so this incredible thing, this subtle, subtle energy that has the capacity to feel, to direct, to understand, to convey, I have guided my body into putting the shoulder blades gently against the back of the chair, and I am aware that they are now touching the chair there. Now, using my consciousness, I am going to envision 2 strings attached to my knees. And so I can even look at my knees, if that helps, and I can imagine those 2 strings attached to the knees. And now, with the power of my consciousness, my awareness, I'm going to hold those strings with that awareness and start to pull them upwards with my mind, with my awareness, pulling them upwards until I feel my feet getting a little bit lighter. They stay on the floor. I might feel my pelvis start to adjust in the chair. Matter of fact, more weight sink into the pelvis underneath the sit bones. I might feel my lower back, a little arch start to emerge. And so all of this, I, the spiritual being, I'm observing. with this capacity to do all of these things quite naturally, direct, observe, experience. It's a wonder. And I might even feel a little bit less weight against the shoulder blades and a more openness feeling in the front of the rib cage. I might start to feel some muscles engaging in the pelvis lower abdominal area. And I'm going to gently hold that lightness of the feet. So I'm still holding those strings, just gently holding them up. And I'm noticing the breath now moving in the rib cage. And I want to direct that breath, have the intention that I will feel that breath gently increasing the volume within the ribs, creating more space, not just in the front, but the sides, the back, like a big bony sphere gently expanding, the muscles in between the ribs stretching. So all the time, the consciousness is directing this. I'm giving my alignment, a little bit of the muscles supporting that alignment, a bit of a workout. And then now maintaining the bones where I feel they are right now. It's almost like I'm going to hold them there with that energy of awareness. And I'm going to release those strings very gradually, feeling my feet, the heaviness of the feet sinking into the floor, and the shoulder blades sinking into the back of the chair. But I'm still observing the gentle movement of the breath in the rib cage. So all of those activities were directed, were recorded, were experienced, were understood by me, the spiritual being, the energy of consciousness. And so in guiding my body in this way, in a very precise and observed way, I've actually helped to strengthen and refine this awareness that I have. That's why often when we exercise, where it requires concentration and focus, we find it actually relaxing, because when that consciousness is focused and used in a very beneficial and accurate way, and not just flying all over the place or nowhere, it's actually quite energizing and nourishing for it. And I'm observing the breath, feeling that freedom in the ribs, feeling that support at the pelvis, lower back. And now I'm going to feel as if my feet are getting a bit heavier, and especially at the heels, starting to press the heels into the floor a little bit, to make some muscles now engage under the pelvis. So I'm creating all this muscular activity in the lower back, abdominals, and pelvis area. Again, more openness in the rib cage. And the whole time, I, the being, I'm observing, I'm directing, I'm experiencing. And then I'm going to release that pressure, but the body won't collapse. I'll maintain that nice long spine, open and free ribs, nice supported pelvis, lower back. And I observe, I allow the body, feeling the weight sinking into the pelvis, the sit bones, the shoulder blades, feeling that length of the spine, the openness of the ribs. So this is this wonderful integration that naturally happens between the being and the body all the time. But what changes things dramatically, and which is the basis and really the purpose of Raj Yoga, is awakening that spiritual consciousness, becoming very conscious and present of this distinction, of this relationship, that I'm not just doing stuff as a body, but I, the being, this point of consciousness sitting here in the center of the forehead, I have directed and guided my body into a more ideal alignment to increase and enhance its functionality. In this alignment, the breath is enhanced. That improves and creates a more quality environment for the functioning of the organs inside this body. That improves the functioning of the joints of this body, the spine, the shoulders, the hips, even up into the neck and head. This truth, this true alignment for the body that creates balance in how the muscles are supporting the bones and then moving those bones. If I were to do anything like lift my arms up, the muscles will work more balanced to create more healthy movement. And balance is a sign of wellness, of health, of well-being. Imbalance, dysfunction. And so we're going to look a little in a moment at what are some of the issues or the things that can prevent this kind of ideal happening in the first place and then, of course, being sustained. But I want us to now go to the being. So last week we had looked at the fact that this being is spiritual. So there's nothing physical. Consciousness is not a product of any part of my physical body, not even the brain. The brain cannot create consciousness. Consciousness cannot emerge from material energy. It exists as a discrete point of conscious living energy that not only is that energy of consciousness, but generates and radiates it, and in turn it becomes thoughts, feelings, attitude, vision or perception, words, when I start to integrate and use it through the body, and activity, and then of course interacting with others. And just as if I want to increase or enhance the quality of movement in the body, I correct the alignment, I move it closer to that true or ideal alignment. If I want to improve or enhance the quality of thoughts, feelings, words, actions, interactions, yes, I could sit there and police all of those different things, but it's a full-time job and it's just not going to happen. It would be too much hard work. But what would be a more efficient method is to shift the quality of the consciousness by changing that consciousness. And when I say changing that consciousness, it means to change the way I identify myself, how I am aware of myself. And so that can be as simple as I am not aware of myself as this body anymore, but I'm starting to awaken an awareness of myself as a spiritual being, an energy separate from this body. I'm the driver sitting in the car that is this body. And I think when we talk about a driver and a car, there is absolutely no kind of confusion there of where the car ends and the being or the driver begins. We have no problem recognizing the car is one thing and the driver is a completely different thing altogether. Not only that, but as valuable as that car might be, there is absolutely no question as to which is more valuable. Hands down, it's always the driver. There's a big car accident. It's not, oh my gosh, what happened to the car? It's, of course, how is the driver? And so the same in terms of this relationship of the being and the body. It's not that the body doesn't matter. Of course it matters. We can't do anything without the body. So the body is important, but the being is that which is essential. And so this shift of awareness of how I identify myself, that when I ask the question, who am I start to change the answer to, I am a spiritual being. This is the practice of Raj Yoga. And I use the tool of meditation where I'm sitting and I'm using thoughts, because of course to meditate means to think.
I'm using thoughts to take me into an experience of that shift of consciousness, an experience of myself as that spiritual being. Because it's not just that I need to shift my awareness and have a different awareness, or I have to change my alignment. I mean, usually when I say to my clients, so, posture is really important, or I even just start to talk about posture, there's all this adjustment going on, and we know that to sit better is just better. But how we do that is so crucial. We did it in a way that started from a seed of a subtle adjustment, just picking at the knees, and all of these things suddenly fell into place. The pelvis, the spine, the ribs, even the shoulders, where the shoulders sit. By activating the core strength of the body, we liberated and empowered it and produced that ideal alignment. In the same way, for the being, it's not that I just sit, I'm a being, I'm a spiritual being, I'm a spiritual being, I'm a spiritual being, I'm not this body. If I'm just doing that in my meditation, first of all, it's not going to be very effective, and I'm not going to keep doing it because it's not going to be very satisfying. I need to do it in a very specific way. And so last week we looked at the fact that in Raj Yoga, we call it a study. It's a spiritual study, a study to enhance spirituality or to emerge spirituality in myself, to explore it, to understand it, and to emerge it, to live it. There are 4 subjects in this study. And so the thoughts that I'm creating are very specific thoughts based on spiritual truths. And so we talked about this, that the being that I am is not physical, so it does not take up any space. There's no mass to it, there's no weight to it, not physical. We talk about it as a point of consciousness. This very, minuscule, like a tiny, tiny star. So it's a point, but it's a radiant point. It's alive, it's conscious, and it's generating vibrations. We sometimes even say it's radiating spiritual light. It's alive. I'm alive. We're all alive. We're living beings. The living being is I. Sometimes the word we'll use is the soul. And this is a word, of course, that many of you would have been familiar with, but something very different. Again, a spiritual truth. It's not that I have a soul, but I am a soul. And just to say those things, just to say them, there's like a recognition. And this is a tool I want to use in my meditation. I'm speaking these spiritual truths in my mind to myself and awakening that recognition. And so just to say to myself, and we can try that right now, I have a soul. I have a soul. And then we can try, I am a soul. I am a soul. They're not too far apart, but words for us have meaning, significance. One will ring true and one will not. Now, it can be quite subtle, but there can be that recognition. I am a soul. This is going to be a shift, and I'll have to listen because I may have gotten very used to and have developed the habit of even thinking I have one. But in fact, I am one. Because, of course, if I perhaps already hold the idea that I'm not this body, and I think I have a soul, that means there's a third element. And what is that? Because I'm not this, I'm not the thing I have, the soul, I'm what? So that opens up a whole mystery, which we can now put aside because in fact there are only 2 aspects, the body, which I'm not, and the soul, which I am. Very, very simple. Just to take that on board and to sit and reflect on that. To drop that in, if you will, the pool of my consciousness. I am a soul. And let it resonate. And let it start to emerge the experience. But there's a few more elements that are going to be needed. So again, I'm going to draw from this body of knowledge, which is the first subject of Raj Yoga, so I can start to bring myself into an experience of the being that I am, into this experience of what we call soul consciousness. And this will take us into what would be the second subject, which is called yoga. Yoga, that state of connection, where I first of all connect with myself as a spiritual being. I establish myself in that awareness, that position, drawing from those spiritual truths of that body of knowledge, in order to be able to ultimately connect to a whole spiritual reality that will support and nurture that spiritual identity that I'm beginning to emerge in myself. And so, more spiritual truths will be very helpful. That I'm a point, that I'm a radiant point, and that I sit here. This is a crucial element in this practice. So I'm the soul, I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm here. And it kind of makes sense. It's where we feel that thinking and consciousness sit in this body. That when we feel a lot is going on, it's kind of up in here somewhere. So much so, sometimes it gives us a headache. And so I sit here in the center of the forehead of this body. This is my seat. And when I feed that sense of myself, I awaken the capacities innate to that being. Just as when I adjust the alignment of the body, I awaken those innate capacities for breath, for healthy function and movement of the body. I improve the functioning of the organs. All of this starts to happen when that alignment is done, is first present, but also made present accurately. So when I seat myself in this awareness, probably one of the first things that happens is I release tension. What is that tension? What is it coming from? That sort of, it's almost like a noise within the mind, a heaviness. Well, let's go back to something that we looked at last week. So this is that revision now of the kinds of thoughts. So remember, there were 4 kinds of thoughts. Positive, thoughts that make us feel good. Negative, thoughts that make us not feel good. Might feel good for a moment, but then we don't feel good. Necessary thoughts to get things done. And then those useless or waste thoughts. And it was mentioned that we have between 10 to 40,000 thoughts a day. And probably the bulk of those are the waste. That kind of hamster wheel thinking, spinning thoughts around and around and around. They go nowhere, they create nothing, and they consume energy, my energy. And so it can be exhausting, and it can create a heaviness, and it's noise, and it limits, it reduces the functioning of the being. And so when that's happening, not only do I create that tension, but I start to transmit it into everything. So it goes into my body. It goes into the kinds of activities, how I engage in what I'm doing, how I engage with others. And then can emerge in the form of sort of irritation and all these things that create more tension in my body. Because of course, you know, these kinds of negative thinking and energy, so it goes from waste can go into negativity, that creates more tension, even toxicity. And of course, all of that is having an impact on the body, on my relationships, on all of these things. So I want to cultivate a fifth kind of thought. And those are pure thoughts. And those pure thoughts are what I generate from those spiritual truths, from that body of knowledge that is that first subject. And so as I generate those pure thoughts, I'm a point, I sit here, I'm very, very subtle, I'm generating, vibrating, radiating. I'm the one seeing through the eyes, the one who observes, the one who is aware, the one who experiences. So I'm not trying to cut myself off particularly from the body. I want to position myself accurately in relationship to this body. And so this is the foundation. I use this practice of meditation, of drawing from those spiritual truths, creating pure thoughts, so that I can position myself in an accurate awareness in which, very naturally, capacities will emerge as the tension and the noise are removed. So I could be sitting in the chair like this, my body's collapsed, my functionality has gone down, my breathing quality has gone down, and, I could sit there and try and breathe better, take better, bigger breaths or something, I can try, okay, I'm going to work my abdominals, try and get stronger, but if I don't change the alignment, it's all, if this is false, it makes everything else false, no matter how hard I try. So I adjust the alignment, I pull my strings, I get my body into that place, and instantly function is enhanced because tensions are removed through a balancing of how the muscles are working to first support the body and move the body, bringing it into a state of balance, well-being, for health, wellness, increased functionality, quality of movement. Again, using those pure thoughts to position myself in this truth, this true awareness, removing the tensions, reducing, the mind will start to become more still, more quiet, more calm, because I'm in the driver's seat. I'm on the seat where I am in that state of mastery very naturally, because I'm in the driver's seat of the car and operating from that position. And as that happens, as that tension is removed, as the mind starts to become more quiet, that sweet silence emerges, capacities emerge. These very beautiful, powerful capacities that are innate to the spiritual being. So the body has all these wonderful abilities that can be accessed and harnessed when the alignment is there. In the same way the spiritual being also has, the soul has all these wonderful natural capacities, qualities, innate to it, powers. And all of them become, or they are used very, very accurately. And this is another function of when I'm in that accurate alignment. So there's accuracy, precision, and these are actually qualities within the Pilates practice. They're all a function of that awareness being used to bring the body into a right state. So when I sit to practice again, there's the meditation and then there's the practice of Raj Yoga. When I sit to meditate, meaning I use my thinking, these pure thoughts, to create a true awareness of the self, and I allow myself to go into that experience where I'm strengthening, I'm reinforcing that sense, that experience of myself in this position. And I need to do that. I need to take the time to strengthen, 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 strengthen. Why? Because it's gotten weak, weak, weak. Yeah. So these muscles that hold the body in a proper alignment, even though they don't have to work so hard, the body is very efficient when it's properly aligned. It's not even I have to strengthen so much the muscles. I have to strengthen the experience of maintaining this alignment, because one of the most difficult things to change in terms of the body is the alignment that I habitually hold it in. It is quite something that you can have someone stand up, properly align them, and one of the first things they'll say is, there's no way I can maintain this. There's no way I can even move in this alignment. I have to kind of ask them, does it feel better? Does the body feel better? Are you, the pain that you were having, has it diminished? And usually the answer to all of those is yes, yes. It's all really good, but I can't do this. It feels so weird. It's almost uncomfortable because it is no longer the norm. Yeah, we've gotten used to having the body in this false, or if you will, damaging alignment. The same thing for here. I have not been living my life present as a spiritual being, sitting in the driver's seat, awake and aware to the subtle radiance, the subtle vibrations of my presence in this body. That is not my norm. And so when I sit to practice, I'm reinforcing the experience of soul consciousness with the understanding that is going to enhance the quality of my life. So hopefully creating that motivation. You decide what it is you want. As I used to dance, and as a dancer, I wanted to be able to do certain movements, certain steps. I wanted to be able to master certain things. And a lot of the time, until things shifted and changed in terms of the alignment, I didn't have the functionality necessary for those things, but I wanted them so much that I was willing to put the time in to reinforce the proper alignment, the proper positioning to make that possible. And so for you, it'll be really important to recognize and to make clear for yourself what it is you want in practicing this. And usually, it's just things like I want to increase the quality of my life. I don't want to be as affected by things. We are so easily influenced and affected by things. We become very, very sensitive because we've been operating out of that powerful position. And also, we've allowed ourselves to identify with things outside of this consciousness. And so that takes us to one of the things we explored last week, the 4 P's of how we've been identifying ourselves. And hopefully you remember what those are if you were with me last week, but we'll go through them again. They are package, this body. So when I look in the mirror, I think, oh, there I am. And I think, oh my gosh, or oh, wonderful. And whatever it is, how I experience that and what I think or feel about that's going to have a big impact on my sense of self-respect or self-esteem, how I value myself, how I feel about myself. Then there are people, the relationships in our life. And people, so that would be, for example, I am someone's sister, or I am someone's daughter, or, I am someone's friend, or whatever it is. But I identify myself relative to another person. 3rd P, possessions. So I am someone who has this, who has that. I own this. This is mine. This is mine. Oh, that's not mine. Oh, you have that. I don't. All of these different things that, again, even though it's much more external, and so we might be less likely to feel, yes, I'm identifying myself with my car. But again, thinking about it from this point of view, if I'm identifying with it, a sense of my value is merged in it. So if something happens to it, my sense of value can be affected, or my sense of quality of life can be affected. So earlier I've been talking about quality of life as being a function of the quality of the being or the consciousness. When I'm not identifying myself in that way, my quality of life becomes very much predicated or dependent on physical factors. The health of the body, the quality of my relationships, how much stuff I have or don't have. And then, of course, the fourth P, which can be a huge aspect of identity and value and quality of life, is the position I hold, my status, the place I have, my job, my role, all of those things, the titles I may have, all of these things I can very much use to define myself and my sense of value, what I accomplish, what I don't accomplish. And of course, through that often, the vision people have on me, sort of a reflection of the position I hold and trying to derive value from that. So then all those four Ps actually kind of get all mixed together as well. But to define myself in that way, to make my sense of value, my sense of meaning, having a meaningful life or a non-meaningful life, predicated on those four Ps, is a recipe for disaster. Sometimes we call it delayed sorrow. Today I'm happy, but, who knows what tomorrow will bring. I can't rely on my body always being healthy. I can't rely on my relationships always, that people are always going to be there. I can't rely on always having the stuff that I have, and I certainly can't rely on the positions. None of those four Ps are in and of themselves bad things. Of course not. A body is a wonderful thing. Relationships, stuff is necessary. And of course, a position can be a means for us to interact and impact others in a very positive and beneficial way. So these four Ps are essential to life. But when I start to identify them, and when I build my value on them, then I get into trouble. But that's exactly what we have been doing. And so because of that, it's like I've been going through my life a little bit out of whack, out of balance. And often the result can be damage, can be hurt, sorrow, taking sorrow. All of these are indicators that something is out of balance, that something is not in the right position. Same thing with the body. If there's pain, it's telling me something isn't right. And so sorrow, we tend to blame it. Well, this happened, that happened, it's out there. Because, of course, I've put myself out there. Everything is out there, including me. It's not a healthy way to live. And it's very unstable. And it's a roller coaster. Now, that may be kind of exciting. People like roller coasters. They are kind of fun. But as a way of living and a way of experiencing my value going up and down like that, no, I don't think anybody enjoys when their value, plummets and goes down into the ground. And so cultivating a spiritual awareness, starting to position my sense of value in the value or the quality of the consciousness is completely in my hands. No one can stop that from happening. Nothing can affect that. It's simply whether or not I do it. Now that, of course, is a big thing. How motivated am I? This will require motivation. It will require determination. It will require patience. It will require consistency and discipline. And I will apply all those things when I want something. So I'm going to share something with you, very little aspect of this practice of Raj Yoga, that as regular members of this practice, we do something called a very, very early morning meditation. We get up very early. I'm not even going to tell you when because I don't want to give you a heart attack, but it's quite early. Other traditions also have early morning, but it's quite early. Most people are still sleeping. Okay, I'll tell you what time it is. We get up for 4 o'clock meditation. Oh. Now, why I mention that is because people usually say, what? You get up at 4 o'clock? Even I thought, what? Getting up at 4 o'clock? Couldn't imagine it. But it's a very quiet time. And remember I mentioned earlier how easily influenced we are? We are so influenced by very gross things, but also very subtle things like vibrations. And because of how weak that consciousness has become, even in positioning itself, and how so many factors that we're going to look at next week actually affect and can diminish my ability to center myself here, to be in a very quiet time, when the vibrations of other people are very calm because they're sleeping, can be a very useful thing in terms of helping me to strengthen that position, that posture, if you will, that spiritual posture, that posture of the soul. And so we get up very early. Now, why I'm mentioning that isn't that, hey, go out and do it, but actually because it's about why I do it is because I feel I get something from it, something that allows me to improve the quality of my life, that makes me happy, that when I go out in my day, I feel good about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Now, I mention this because some people in their jobs, they have to be at work. You know, for example, my sister. So again, that people and that relationship thing, I don't identify myself as the sister, but anyway, so this person who is my sister, she worked at a facility called the YMCA. They open their doors very early. I don't know if it's 6 or 7, but they open them very early so people can go there before going to work. So the people that work there, they have to get up very early, especially if they're coming from far away. Some of them are getting up as early as what I need to get up to meditate at 4. You tell those same people, oh yeah, I get up at 4 o'clock to meditate, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. But they will get up to go and open up this facility so people can come and work out. Why? Because they get something that is valuable to them. They get a paycheck. And so it's about what you want and what you're going to get out of it. Now, you need to put the time in, and no, you do not have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But first thing when you get up, it's a nice time to lay your foundation for the day. You know, so just to kind of set you up for your meditation practice, find a place in your home that you will dedicate to, I sit here and I cultivate a spiritual consciousness. And so it doesn't have to be anywhere special or even a room of its own. I had a corner when I first started doing this. Actually, all I had was a piece of wall with a chair in front of it, a little table, and I think I had a candle there. But you dedicate it to that. So when you sit in that chair, already it's almost like you start to create a habit of this is what I do when I sit here. Do it at regular times. So I suggest first thing in the morning, so you lay that foundation. Because as soon as you get up, if you don't take the time to establish the right relationship of you, the being, with this body, you'll start to generate the thoughts of what you've got to do, what happened yesterday, what could be happening. All of these things will start to happen. Take the time, first thing in the day. Give that nourishment to the spiritual being of that accurate awareness. And then as you go through the day, if there's moments that you can do it during the day, great, but at least do it at the end of the day, closure, just to again reinforce. So those are 2 key moments to start your practice, at least for sure the beginning of the day, and then again at the end. Bookend your day with that practice. And so to finish our session today, I'd like to, again, let's take ourselves into that experience. Take a moment to align the body using the consciousness. And now, using the power of your awareness, you're going to move that awareness, which is now, I want you to just focus on the breath for a moment, observing the breath. You're going to move that consciousness upwards to where your eyes sit in your head. Because it's very helpful for integration purposes if we can right away connect seeing and breath and the awareness all together. because these are 3 elements that are necessary for action. When we perform action, this is a practice that we do with the eyes open so that it is something we can integrate into everyday activities. So keep the eyes gently open very naturally. This will be maybe something new for you. The idea of meditating and eyes open, and yet it's about living. And hopefully most of the time that you're living your life, your eyes are probably open. And it's about awareness. When you're aware, eyes wide open, but comfortably so. You're awake. So this is sleep, this is awake. So you're bringing that awareness and you're positioning it in your eyes, in that field of vision just in front of the eyes, with the understanding that where I'm positioning my awareness, it's as if I'm positioning it in the energy that is radiating out through my eyes from the spiritual being that is me, that is seated here in the center of the forehead. And just by bringing my awareness into my eyes, into that seeing, that energy of sight that we refer to as drishti, it automatically centers that awareness. And it's as if I've now turned that energy of my own awareness on myself. To give myself an experience of myself, to see, if you will, myself. Sometimes we call this the third eye, the eye of awareness, that I've now connected to the physical eyes, the eye of the awareness that I sit here, and I'm turning that awareness on the self to have an experience of I, the soul. And as I hold gently that position, just as I held the posture, the alignment of the body very gently, but firmly, accurately, things become lighter, calmer. I let go. The mind calms down, becomes more still and silent. And it's almost as if the eyes, the seeing, become illuminated, as if the light radiating from the soul increases in intensity. Again, all subtle, but it can be felt, can be known, and recognized. And the breath, even in the body, becomes easier and lighter, more free. As I release the tension in the being, I release it in the body. The being becomes well, true well-being. As I sit centered, becoming concentrated, more vibrant. There's a lightness, a sweet silence, peace. Very vibrant, but very calm at the same time. Pure power. A power that is benevolent. And all of this gives me the feeling, the experience of deep contentment within myself. feeling of wholeness. And it's so simple, just to stabilize the sense of self in the point, using these pure thoughts, positioning myself in myself, and observing, experiencing. And I'm drinking it in, I'm accumulating, absorbing the experiences, strengthening this awareness, this spiritual alignment. So I'd like you to practice this. Practice being in this consciousness. And then eventually, as you practice it, you'll start to be able to sustain it. The next week we'll explore and look at what will help us to sustain it, and what can actually be obstacles to sustaining it. Why is it so easy when we sit? Why does it become more challenging when we get up and start moving around, talking, walking? It's kind of like the talk, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Can we stay in this consciousness and interact at the same time? Yes. It will require more knowledge and more practice. So until then, I remind you again that we are an organization. We are a center part of a world, an international organization called the Brahma Kumaris. We offer all of our activities, and especially now that we're online, of course, they're free of charge. But your contribution, if you wish, is most appreciated, and the information to be able to do that will be made available to you. It probably is already. And we thank you for that in advance, and thank you for your presence, of course, and for joining us this evening. So until then, take care, stay aligned, stay awake, stay aware, and Om Shanti. Just to remind you, Om, I the being, Shanti, am peaceful. Take care and good evening.